Hi everybody, welcome to the Paranormal Connection. I'm your host, Donna Woolberg. Well, my guest tonight is an author and co-author of so many books. She has so much information to impart that we're going to have to do it in a two-part series. But I'd like to introduce to you tonight Cynthia Sue Larson. She's going to be talking to us about her book, Reality Shifts. And it's just packed with information, so I'm glad you can join us. It's so nice to have you here.
Oh, it's a pleasure to be here. Thank you.
Well, before we delve into this fascinating book, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, I've got a background in physics. I majored in physics at UC Berkeley, and I mention that just so that you know that I am interested in the nature of reality. That's been a long-standing interest of mine. What happened that got me interested in this metaphysical direction that I've been writing about for many years is that I had a Kundalini awakening experience. So that was the kickoff for me to become a spiritual life coach and an author, and also to find out more about this subject that's in Reality Shifts, about consciousness changing the physical world.
Well, it's a book that's written for the layman, for the person who has a background in science. There's something in there for everybody. So I really commend you on the job you did, because it's a hard thing to delve into. But before we start, why don't you explain to people out there what a reality shift is?
Yes, a reality shift is when something appears, disappears, transforms, or transports, or it can be a change in the experience of time. So it's basically any number of things, including synchronicities, coincidences. It could be spontaneous remission of disease. Often people notice things like their socks are missing from the laundry, or they might notice that their keys are not where they put them. So all of these things fall under the general category of reality shifts, which is pretty big.
Well, you've got a lot of stories in there that explain things that have happened to you, that have happened to friends, that make it interesting too. And I'm sure there's everybody out there can relate to the socks in the dryer, right? You know, you put two in, you put two in. Where is it? You know, where did it go? So why don't you explain in the scientific part of it what happens?
Okay, well, that's a good question. What is happening? And there are several theories. What's happening when we look at what's going on that level is we're noticing basically quantum physics behavior occurring at the macro level. So we're noticing what Einstein once called spooky action at a distance, where you can see that there's entanglement of quantum particles. So I know I don't want to get too much into all this, but basically things are very strange at the quantum level, because basically that's the place where you can see the fundamental building blocks of matter, which don't even behave like matter. They behave more like energy half the time, at least. So there's a wave nature to all of this so-called physical reality that we take for granted. We expect that our chairs aren't going to vanish out from under us. Yet we do expect that there will be some of these same quantum effects, quantum tunneling, quantum teleportation, quantum entanglement. We would expect to see all of these things on the macro scale, and we are. So what does this mean in layman's terms? It means every now and then the chair may not be here that we were expecting would be here.
Wow.
And as far as why is that happening, as far as physics is concerned, there are lots of front line top contenders for explanations. There could be parallel universes. That seems like a strong contender to me.
Now, you explained that in your book, and I thought that was really fascinating. You want to go into that a little bit?
Sure. So in a parallel universe, if you're looking at the possibility that there's a you that you think of as you right now, and there's this book that's right in front of you, and this chair, all the things you're used to, in a parallel universe, these things might all be pretty much the same but slightly different. And so, for example, you might not have the same haircut. Your hair might be a different style, might be a different color. You might have a different job. Or it could be just as small a change as the book has different contents in it. And that's an experience that I once encountered, where I was reading a book that I thought was almost good and almost something that I would want to recommend, but not quite. And it seemed like the author had been tentative and a little bit embarrassed about the paranormal nature of the material. And so I thought, wow, what a shame. This would have been a phenomenal book if he just had some confidence. And I brought it out to show a friend, like this is an example of a very unfortunate situation where someone just didn't have the courage to show that they really believed in the material. And then the book was completely different. So it was like, wow, the whole book is different.
Oh, wow.
It's more the way I would want it to be. It's not a good example of what not to do. It's a pretty good book now.
So what you're saying is some of it we have control of and some of it we don't.
Yeah, the word control is interesting because then it brings up the question, who is in control? Who are we? And that's a very deep question. It's a good one, but then you wonder what level of reality are you operating? And so people that meditate, they get a sense of themselves that's much bigger than the ego sense of self that we often have. So when I talk about ego, I just mean the small I, the sense that that I was born, I will die, that I only have control over a certain small number of things. When you identify with a part of yourself that's much more timeless and much more independent through time and space, then these kinds of experiences that I call reality shifts are commonly encountered by people, for instance, in Tibetan Buddhism, when they follow a spiritual path. And what they get is advice: don't be distracted by people that walk through walls. Don't be distracted by these little things, popping out of nowhere. Because to them, the whole point of the spiritual path is to become a better person in terms of a sense of who you are. So control, coming back to your question, from the ego sense of point of view, reality shifts are not something that people can use to win the lottery and to do things that would go against their higher self. There's going to be a problem there. So for those...
Now, how do you know that? What determines that?
What determines is a good question. When you think, I'll make it simple. If you think in terms of winning the lottery, your head might say, that would be great, all my problems would be solved. And your heart might feel like, but that's not really what I care about, I just want love in my life. I just want to be happy. And when you go to your gut feelings, they might just be all wrenched up because you've got money issues and it's just churning in there. So is that person going to win the lottery? Probably not. Not likely. What it takes to win the lottery would be alignment of all these things.
Okay, now you talk about alignment and you sort of describe it as waves that are going in a straight line. Your intent, if it's pure, goes in a straight line. But as soon as your thoughts interfere with that, then it becomes wavy and it kind of makes them veer off to the right or to the left. And as you just explained, you're not going to win the lottery. The things that you think you really want aren't going to happen for you. So can you go into that a little bit deeper?
What we're talking about now is constructive interference versus destructive interference of wave functions. And for people that remember math, they remember they've got a wave function that's going like this, and then one that's going just the opposite of it. Then it comes out to a flat line. And flat line is not good. It's like dead. So you don't want flat line.
Unless it's your picture hanging on the wall.
Right. So you want constructive interference where you can build a mountain of intention. So it becomes a very clear focus. And this is the kind of thing, if you study meditation or martial arts, something that focuses all of you on one particular goal, then you can do amazing things like break a board or do things you never thought you could do before. And you can shift reality better because you're all in alignment like you're talking about. Whereas destructive interference would actually create just the opposite of what you think you want. So if you're thinking, I'm afraid of snakes and going for a hike, this is what happened to a friend of mine. We were on a hike in the park near my home, and she said, I have to tell you, I'm afraid of snakes. And we saw 2 6-foot snakes on that hike. I've never seen snakes that big in that park. I didn't know they existed. I'd only previously seen small ones.
Wow. Isn't that Murphy's Law?
Yeah, exactly.
If you're afraid of it, it's going to happen.
Right.
Well, okay, so what part does our brain play in organizing these things? The destruct and the construct.
Right. Our brain is the part of our being that is thinking. So it's the part that has the idea. It's the one that's like the conductor in the orchestra telling everyone what to do. And you really need to have the whole orchestra playing together, because if the gut, like I said earlier, is not on board with this, then things can go totally haywire. So it's not all just what the brain does, but the brain is important. That's the part that has the vision. That's the part that has the idea of what you'd like to intend for yourself. So keeping that bigger awareness of who you are, much more than just what you want for your small self, but what you want in terms of all of humanity, for your whole family, for your community. When you do things that give back, for example, people feel better about themselves, and that tends to open up the energy lines better. So that's something that you can do to intend how good can it get for all of us?
Yeah.
Just that kind of a question.
Wow. This goes so deep. So deep. So keep talking. Tell us more about reality shifts and how we can be aware of them.
Right. Well, I got fascinated in reality shifts when I was wondering why I couldn't find anything on the internet at the time. This is many, many years ago, before the internet was the internet. But I was checking through the university connections and noticing there should be something about this, because I'm noticing business hours are changing. I'm seeing people in cars vanishing in front of my eyes. I'm not doing drugs. You know, it's just mind-blowing. And the more I keep asking, what other kind of reality shifts are there, I'm experiencing more of them. So what I came to find out is, I noticed this wasn't written about, but it's a very common experience. So the first thing we can do is to notice that it's happening, pay attention, and don't just dismiss things because that's impossible, or I must have remembered this wrong. Instead of just washing it away, tell someone about it and pay more attention to it. Open the subject up. You know, get the book Reality Shifts, leave it on the coffee table. Open the subject up so people can talk about it, because you'll find, as I have, that the more you talk about it, the more people come forward and they tell you, you know, something amazing happened to me too.
Yeah.
And then often people just feel like they're going crazy, like this is something you can't really discuss. So,
I know, when you misplace things, and it not only is it frustrating, but you feel like you're losing your mind.
Right.
And I had told Cynthia a little story about my car keys. I couldn't find them. They weren't in my purse. I had driven my car the day before. There was no reason for them not to be there. And I ended up finally, using my valet key to get to where I needed to go. My daughter came in and said, "Your car keys were on the seat of my car." How they got there, there's just no explanation other than either, there was poltergeist or some kind of spirit activity that put them there, or a reality shift that took place somehow. Maybe I was in her car in another parallel universe and didn't realize it.
Exactly. That actually is possible. And that's very similar to the kinds of reality shifts I've had with magazines that just went to a friend's house instead of my house. A magazine I really wanted to read. Like, darn, it's gone. And sometimes I've lost jewelry. I lost a whole little travel case of my favorite jewelry once. And that was gone for weeks, which can be disconcerting and upsetting. But because I know reality shifts, then I also know things can come back. And so when you realize this whole world is very fluid, and just because something's gone for a little while doesn't mean it's completely gone, then you have the possibility of bringing it back to you. So I was just imagining, where would I expect to see it if it came back? And I pay attention to just the little ideas that come to mind, even if they make no sense. And I got my underwear drawer, which made me laugh. Like, this jewelry case belongs in my purse. I don't keep it in the underwear drawer. At least then I didn't. But then I just kept seeing it there, as if I was seeing another reality where that's where it is. And then one day, there it was. So I don't know how to explain it, except to say that these quantum effects definitely do happen all the time. And we do see them on the macro scale, just like we would expect to.
Wow.
So, yeah.
Well, what happens on a larger scale?
Larger than jewelry cases and...
Yeah. What kind of things, are going on right now in the world that you're noticing that maybe the average person isn't noticing?
I notice lots of things when it comes to politics, environmental causes, things like the fear about Y2K, for example. There was a lot of concern about that. Sometimes there's concern about wars breaking out. But we collectively have a much greater say in what goes on with reality than we give ourselves credit for. I mean, we can look back and laugh at Y2K, like it's funny now, like nothing happened.
Yeah.
But what's important to notice is that we collectively, because we don't want certain things to happen, we have a way of averting disaster. Now, some things we need to learn from, clearly. So we have wars. It's not like we've averted all wars and avoided all problems, but...
Well, is it because of the awareness level? Is it because the more people that are aware of something that's going on, the more the conscious collaboration, we can make that shift as
exactly.
as a whole.
The more we are aware of things, then the more we can shift them around, and we can get to a place where all of us are working more together instead of more for petty, selfish interests.
Yeah.
So it becomes a spiritual message for all of us to be aware of. And this, when I look at things, and when I said I'd see things changing on those scales, what I mean is that I can actually look for what I would call good news. And all of us that meditate, all of us that pray, I invite you to do this today. Just look at the news and ask yourself, what kind of good news can you find today? If you were to just do a Google search and find something about a topic that bothers you, something that you feel like, well, this isn't really the way it should be going. You know, we shouldn't have global warming, or whatever the cause or issue might be. Pay attention to it. Instead of looking for proof that things are really going rapidly downhill, look for good news. And that's something that I find it very fun to do, to just look for good news. And I know that by doing that, I'm actually helping choose a better reality for all of us.
Yeah.
So it's a very active process.
So what kind of things can we do to improve our awareness, perhaps even, you know, the things that are happening to us in our lives, you know, through this process?
Right. Well, it's all about mindfulness. It's all about lucidity. And you might be familiar with the term lucid dreams. Okay. So in a lucid dream, you know that what you're doing is you're waking up inside the dream. And at some point you realize, wow, this is a dream. This is a dream. I'm in a dream. And it's that awareness, that sort of a jolt of realization that this is not as real as it seems. What I invite everybody to do is to start intending that you're going to notice when you're asleep. And you can start doing this with your dreams when you're sleeping. And then if you've done that a few times, bring it into your waking life. And tell yourself, even as you're in this so-called reality, that this is a dream. And that you're awake in that dream. And it's an amazing thing that can happen when you go to that place, because that's when you realize you're much more than that little ego, that small self that we were talking about earlier. The one that can get hurt feelings, because we all get hurt feelings, and feel like bad things are happening, or you might die, or be very fearful, or just sensing that you need to react back to something because obviously they did something to you. When you get out of those little dramas and rise above it, then you achieve this state where reality can totally shift very easily with everything you think. And I think that's the way we'd want it to be. When you think, why would it be that way? Well, to me, it's a little bit like we wouldn't want to have dogs driving cars, for example, because they're not ready to operate heavy machinery. You know, I've got a dog and I love him to pieces, but I think the first time he sees a squirrel, it'd be just, So it's the same thing with us. We want to reach a certain level of competency and responsibility before we have that level of effect on reality. So it's built in. I think it's a safety mechanism. We're getting to play with this a little bit. That's what I really think. And as all of consciousness around the world is rising and people are more aware of that we're all as one, that love is the answer, that we can empathize with one another, that we are all so very connected, and all of these wonderful spiritual perennial truths. As we recognize this and get to that point, then we reach that place.
So the vibrations of words, of feelings, of thoughts, those all come to play with the reality shifts, because you're affecting whatever the scientific terminology would be of what's going on in the cosmos. That's having an effect.
It does. Yeah, what you call vibration definitely has an effect. And we can think of it in terms of electromagnetic frequencies. We're aware that the vibrational frequency of the heart...
I knew you'd be able to explain it.
Well, the heart has this huge EMF field. It's the biggest field produced by any organ in our body. And so it's something that goes out way beyond farther than my feet and way beyond my hands. So it's just this big field of energy, and you can feel when you're in the loving presence of someone. It's really viscerally, palpably real. Like you can tell when there's a nurse that really cares about you rather than someone who's just filling out forms on the clipboard. And you can tell when a teacher really cares, that their heart is really there with you. It's authentic, it's real. And what we're feeling is that, that very strong electromagnetic field. It's more than that, I believe, but I'm just relaying it to something that we can quantifiably measure, that we can say, yes, that's true, because often we want that kind of evidence, especially when we get into the metaphysical.
Yeah, that's extraordinary. Now, I've read most of this book, and I will finish it. But it's the kind of thing that you want to really savor. There's so much cool information in there, and you do give tips on how we can kind of manifest things for ourselves and change our reality.
Yes.
Do you want to go into that a little bit? Well, we still have time, unless we're going to stretch this out and make it our own, which we could do.
Yeah. Well, some of the examples, I like to place them right after each chapter. So after the chapter on reality, then I bring up an example of how you can do something that you're used to doing. Like you can do everybody can do this right now. Just clasp your hands together, put your hands together like this, and then take a look and see which thumb is on top. And you're the same as me, your right thumb's on top. And now do it the other way. It's probably going to feel really, really weird.
Yeah.
Doesn't it feel really strange?
It does.
And so this is an example given in the book Reality Shifts about the way when we start, we get into habits. And so it's an example of when you think one way for long enough, it gets harder and harder to get back to that beginner's mind.
Wow.
When everything is so fresh and new. And the beginner's mind is the place you really want to be for noticing reality shifts and for bringing them into the world much more fluidly.
Well, that's awesome. You know what? We're almost out of time. Yeah. Why don't you give everybody your information and let them know where they can find your book and where they can contact you?
Okay. Well, you can find all my information at realityshifters.com, and that is the best way to reach me, is through the website. My email is cynthia@realityshifters.com, and that's the fastest way to get a hold of me. So I hope everybody does get a chance to visit my website. There are lots of stories about reality shifts there, and it's lots of free information, articles, stories, examples. So if they're just tempted to learn more, that's a great place to go.
What about your book? Where can we find it?
The book, Reality Shifts, is available through Amazon.com and also Barnes & Noble, and you can get it from any bookstore. Just go and ask for it by name, Reality Shifts, by Cynthia Sue Larson.
Great. Well, let's give a little bit of information about the Paranormal Connection, shall we? The Paranormal Connection airs the first and third Thursdays of the month at 9:30 p.m. following Ancient Wisdom on Comcast, Channel 17 in Sacramento County. Our companion show, Paranormal Insights, airs on the second and fourth Thursday of the month. You can also watch us online. Go to accesssacramento.org and click on Watch 17. Encores of each show air Friday at 1:30 p.m. and Saturday at 5:30 a.m. Contact me at paranormalconnectiontv@gmail.com and check for upcoming information on all of our guests at paranormalconnectiontv.blogspot.com. Join us on Facebook. Just search for Paranormal Connection. Become a friend, become a fan. Okay, in the few minutes that we have left, is there anything that you'd like to impart to our audience just to kind of bring this topic all together?
Well, I think the main thing to keep asking is good questions, because when we ask questions, we're inviting this very lucid experience with the universe to continue. So I would recommend asking the question, how good can it get? And with that question, you're leaving it open-ended, so you can keep raising the bar of what you can expect in life. And so for many of us who've had a rough start or rough times, much of the problem is just kind of getting our head up, lifting our head up, setting our sights a little higher.
Now, what can we do to make this a global effort?
I would recommend just do something nice for a stranger, for a loved one every day. Recognize that even a smile, the tone of your voice, has the power to make a tremendous difference. We know it when we receive it, but we often forget to do it.
Yeah. I love that. That's so simple.
Yeah.
Everybody can do that. Well, and pick up this book. You know, you're going to learn a lot, and you're going to find out where that sock is. You're going to see it someplace else, and it's going to be there. It's great. It is. It's like magic, and it's fun. when you start having these experiences and you start recognizing them, it just leads you on this different journey in life. So, with the minute that we have left, is there anything?
Well, I didn't get into the healing sections in this book, and
Okay,
they're phenomenal.
talk about that.
So 1 minute for healing. A lot of people recognize sometimes they're told by a doctor that you have so many months left. I'm not going to say don't listen to that, but do open your mind to other possibilities. There are alternative healthcare practitioners out there, and I think that a lot of our Eastern practitioners understand what this book is all about, which is that we have amazing ability to jump to another reality where whatever it was is no longer wrong and that you're back to full health. It is possible.
So the adage, mind over matter, is a real thing.
It is real.
And also, row, row, row your boat
Yes.
gently down the stream. Life is but a dream. We're taught that as children, but we forget,
Yeah.
and we don't really understand what that means until, you start looking into things like this and say, wow, we had this from the beginning. We just have to reconnect to it and start using it.
That's right.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for coming on today. You've been a fantastic guest, and we've got more. So don't go away. Tune into the next show because Cynthia is going to be talking about 2012, the sacred shift, high energy money, which is something that everybody can use. And we're going to be talking about auras, and she even has a meditation CD. That's beautifully done. So come on back and join us, and we hope you enjoyed the show tonight.